acquire that data would be to, if we made these changes and then track the
Well,
data.
no, that's not necessarily
You know.
true, because I went back 10 years,
Oh, well,
and
Go ahead.
the tardiness data has hit a high around, starting in 2003, and then came down to less than 3%.
yeah, but you'd have to, I mean, back 10 years ago, and even going back before that, the attendance and the overall attendance was a problem here. And that was part of the reason we brought in another principal, who we would have been better off with all kids being late every day. But this particular provision, I'm not sure is gonna have a huge impact. And I think if you made the change and tracked the data with the changes that I'm recommending, I'm guessing you're not gonna see any type of a change in the absenteeism or I'm sorry, not the absentee, the dismissal rate or the tardiness rate. Because there's
Conversely-
consequences, John. There are consequences. These are additional consequences. There are still consequences for being tardy, and there are still you talk about somebody that's tardy 12 times. If they're tardy 10 times, don't they lose credit for the first period course?
No, it depends on how late they are.
So I'm just saying there are consequences besides this.
But
That's all.
we have that in a number of areas. We have a stricter academic policy for participation. We have a suspension policy for violation of the chemical health rule, in addition to suspension from school. I think
That's consistent with the MIA policy. I mean,
well, not on the academic piece. The academic piece, we have a stricter policy. We expect our students to pass 7 out of 8 classes. That's a more strict policy than
But
is recommended. I think for me, we encourage good attendance, and I think you have an obligation as a student to your activity, whatever it is, whether it's an extracurricular or athletics. And I just think we have treated students reasonably, and we've treated families reasonably when extenuating circumstances have arisen. And
Well,
we're on the phone. Mrs. Lucci's on the phone. I mean, we work it, and I think because of that.
I'm not suggesting you don't, but I respectfully disagree with you.
Okay,
And
that's all right.
And again, I believe the policy's in place regardless of who the principal, the vice principal is, and what administration's in place. And, it should be the same and should be consistent. And to suggest that, on a daily basis, within a matter of an hour or whatever, you're gonna make a decision what's exceptional without any definition of what exceptional is, I think that could be a problem at some point.
Yeah, I would also, and I hear what you're saying about no matter who the administrator is, that's true, but I also, believe the adage that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, right now, I don't see that it's broken. I think the policy works well. Our attendance rates are high, extremely, they're enviably
John,
high.
I don't want to belabor that. I'm suggesting that these changes would not affect the attendance rate.
Okay, and
I'm suggesting, what I'm saying to
they
you,
would.
what I'm saying
I
to
think
you
they
is
would.
that the students in question, you're assuming that for some reason, they're being dismissed for no good reason, or that they're out sick on a Friday for no good reason. There are situations where kids are legitimately sick. They're not trying to beat the
Of course,
system.
I know that.
They're not trying to beat the
I
system.
know, I think that happens far more frequently than it doesn't. I believe that.
Kathy?
I just have a question for John, and just a note, a point of information. In the policy, it talks about in exceptional cases, the principal or his designee may waive these conditions. But in the handbook, isn't there more specific language around the exceptionality
Yes.
that pertains to this?
Well, there is. There are a number of reasons stated about what constitutes. It's
Right.
more around absences. Personal illness, serious illness or death in the family, unanticipated accident or family emergency, religious observance, school-sponsored event, and then it has other as determined by a school administrator. That could be some sort of medical appointment, or, that's probably the most common one.
Just to give my opinion here, I've heard what Jerry has said, and to a point agree with him, but I think I more strongly agree with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it policy. However, if John was not here as principal, I may have a different, because I do think I haven't heard a complaint in 7 years on this school board from someone saying, Principal Bernard didn't let me play, or my son play, or my daughter play sports because I was late to school, or I didn't show up on a Friday, I was sick on a Friday. I've never heard that. Now, maybe it happens, and if it does happen, my guess is that the parents and the kids accept it because they know what the policy is.
Well, accepting it doesn't make it right.
Well,
policy is based on societal norm. If the societal norm is acceptable, most of our policies are based on societal norms and or evidence or a combination thereof, then I think it's okay. But we also talk about the fact that we want to give coaches, for example, some discretion about their players. I think we should give our administrators the same level of discretion, respecting the experience that they have. So I support this policy as written.
When I look at this, the one area that does bother me the most is the day before the weekend or holiday activities. I think the dismiss policy as we have it now, and I'm gonna make a recommendation as to how it's worded, is fine. I think the tardy policy is fine, because my guess is by giving the administrator the chance to make individual decisions, that most individual decisions get made the proper way, is my guess, by giving the administrator leeway. So I guess in terms of this policy, we should do two things. One, I want to quickly highlight what some of the changes are. And then two, we can read through it, and I guess as we read through it, when we want to make edits, and there'll probably be some minor edits tonight, we should stop and make them, and then for the second reading, we will read them as
Count them
edited,
in.
correct? The major changes here, right now, relate to, on the first, second, and third violation, we are requiring that students participate in a chemical dependency educational program that's approved by the principal. Also, a big change is that on the third and subsequent violation, the student loses eligibility for all extracurricular activities or athletic activities for a full calendar year. I think those are the two, would you say
Those
right
are the-
now,
those are the big
the
changes.
major changes
Right.
in this policy?
Those are the big changes, except for the issue around the weekend or dismissals or tardies,
Right.
unexcused and so forth.
Right.
The rest of them are just that primarily.
And then we have we also list the MIAA policy in here as reference only.
As a reference only.
So what's the committee's wish? Should we read through this as a policy, and then should we discuss / argue / edit as we go, and then?
The way that this current document is presented is that there's two alternates to the first paragraph.
Mhm.
And that follows through in the last paragraphs of the athletic policy. And those are principally around this issue of absent or weekend or whatever. And the alternates really are aimed at basically the way it is today versus taking the weekend away, making that not an issue. And then a few other things, the dismissed for illness is in one of these options.
Mhm.
Because if you've got a dismissal, whether you're coming back to school or not, it would seem that the dismissal is a permitted thing. It's something that is automatically excused. But a dismissal for illness, you don't want a sick kid coming back and spreading it around at whatever event it is. So that's the reason why I did the dismiss for illness for the benefit of everybody. There's a question about dismissals as whether they're you come back. Well, what if the dismissal was later in the day and you didn't come back, but you were there for the first half of the day? So I guess the come back part didn't fit very well.
Well, I guess what we need is
We
a
ought to
consensus in
straighten
terms
out-
of A or
Straighten
B.
out A or B and
Right.
and come up with a sort of a
Because
consensus.
I think that's where the only issue
Right.
is right now.
That's really what, I think we had agreed on all the rest of it as a committee
I
in
know-
our last session.
I'm sure Jerry would support B with some changes. B is the one that says for weekend or holiday activities, this requirement is waived.
At the very least, I'd ask that we not make the distinction dismissed for illness versus dismissed.
Right.
Because we didn't make that distinction, I don't think, in the handbook, if it
Right.
says you can return as long as you've attended 50% of the school day. So I don't feel that,
Well, I think for either one, on either A or B, the dismissed needs to say, a student who is absent, tardy, unexcused, dismissed, and does not return to school and spend at least 50%, in attendance or something like that
Whatever the
for that
language
day,
may be.
whatever the.
Yeah, go back to the original
Right.
language in the,
I'm gonna stay with A, because I think the policy is not broken at this time. So, but I wanted to get a consensus of the committee as to whether they want to proceed with A or B here, and then we can, I know Jerry would prefer to go with B.
no, I'm writing alternate C.
Oh, you are? Okay.
So I'm not going with either A or B.
All right, so while you're writing alternate, what will alternate C be?
Just what I said, what I've already stated.
I actually had a C at one time.
Well,
But wouldn't B pretty much be what your C is?
with the changes that I suggested.
But it says that for weekend or holiday activities, this requirement is waived, so a student obviously doesn't have to be in attendance on school.
Yeah.
but it doesn't incorporate the change that you'd like to see for tardiness, right?
And what specifically is that change for tardiness? What would you,
The change would be that if it's an unexcused tardy, that whatever sanction is imposed for being tardy is imposed.
actually, the tardy isn't in the second one, is it?
It's not in there.
The tardy's not even in the
It's
second one.
removed
It's
completely.
removed completely.
I thought that's really where Jerry was.
All right, Cliff, you're right. You're right, I'll go with B. Scratch C.
B, but we would have to change to dismissed. Karen?
I support
Well,
A.
The dismissal would be consistent with what we already have in the handbook,
Right.
right?
We want to get the same wording. That's what we can state here. We want to get the same wording that's in the handbook for the dismissal. Michael?
I support B.
B. Cliff?
I think I'll go for B.
I'll definitely go for B.
Interesting, okay.
Okay.
Poor Mel and me are
Well, I think
stuck.
that shows where we are, so I think at this time, let me read B here. Should we just do the reading as the chair? Should I do the reading and then we can discuss as we go along? That's what we usually do, right? Any changes or edits that we want made?
Yeah.
This is the first reading, rules for participating in extracurricular activities, JHAE-R. And we're going with alternate B here. So I'll start as follows. 1, all students who participate in extracurricular activities will be in attendance at school on the day of participation in any activity. For weekend or holiday activities, this requirement is waived. I guess I might have an issue with the wording on that, but I think, is that
I
wording?
agree the wording is improper.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're not in school, that's the whole thing. You're not in school on those days to
Right.
begin with.
So we could just take that out, right?
You need to mention something about weekend or holiday
Yeah, because it
activities
says
because-
will be in attendance on the school
Right.
day of participation. I mean, the reason the Friday was included is because it was specifically pointed out in the prior policy. Obviously, you can't be in school on the day, on a weekend or a holiday.
Right, so what do we say there?
I already put my words in.
Well, I can offer something as much as I disagree with it. Why have any reference to it?
I'd say, why have any
Right.
reference to it at all?
Just take it out.
To be in attendance on the school, on the day of
Right.
participation, right?
Well, that would then imply that if it was on an extracurricular activity on the weekend, you'd have to be in school that day. Right?
No, by not addressing weekend or holiday activities, it's
You
just,
could put, will be in attendance on school day, on school days when school is in session to participate, you know? Otherwise, everybody would be ineligible on the weekends.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason why it's in here as it's waived on the weekend. It just clarifies what the
Let's-
weekend
should we-
valuation
It's
is.
just clarification is what it is.
All right,